The chamber of the Galactic Council had never been this silent. The air itself seemed to tremble with the weight of disbelief. Every delegate frozen in their seat, their eyes fixed on the shimmering holographic display at the center of the vast hall. The image it projected was simple, just a blue-green sphere, spinning slowly against the black void of space. Earth. For centuries, it had been dismissed as a primitive world, an isolated relic from humanity's early chaos. But now the entire galaxy was watching it with dread. The humans had answered, and their response had shaken every empire in the known systems. It had begun like every other conflict the Council had dealt with. A simple disciplinary strike, a warning. Humanity had been warned repeatedly to halt their resource expansion on the outer colonies, where ancient alien relics still lay buried beneath uncharted soil. But the humans never listened. They kept digging, kept building, driven by something the Council could never understand: curiosity, pride, defiance, maybe all three. So the Council approved a limited retaliation, a single planetary strike to cripple Earth's orbital command grid. It was supposed to end the matter quietly. Instead, it ignited the most terrifying chain of events the galaxy had ever seen. When the beam struck, the humans didn't surrender. They didn't flee. Within hours, Earth went dark, completely off the grid. Every transmission cut, every satellite vanished. For 3 full days, the planet was silent. The Council believed humanity had been broken. Some even celebrated. Then, on the 4th day, every major communication relay in Council space flickered to life with a message that no one could ever forget. A human face appeared on screen, eyes calm, voice steady, carrying no trace of fear, only promise. "You attacked our home," the voice said. "You've mistaken silence for defeat. Now you'll learn what silence means to us." That was the last transmission before the retaliation began. At first, no one understood what was happening. A research outpost orbiting Varanus Prime simply vanished from its coordinates. Then a convoy of Council ships was found adrift, their systems completely dead, their crews missing. No damage, no struggle, no trace. One by one, the reports came in from across the outer rim. Power grids collapsing, navigation networks shutting down, entire fleets immobilized in space, and not a single human vessel was detected anywhere near them. It was as if the Earth itself had become invisible and unstoppable. The Council's military command scrambled for answers. Every species had faced human warfare before, but this was something different. This wasn't brute force or chaos. It was precise, surgical. Every system targeted was one that the Council had used to monitor Earth. The retaliation wasn't just destruction, it was erasure. One of the generals called it a ghost war. Another whispered that maybe humanity had discovered something in those forbidden ruins they were told to stay away from, something they were never supposed to find. Behind the scenes, panic spread. Empires that once treated humanity as an afterthought now turned their fleets toward Earth, not in attack, but in fear. Because somehow the humans were dismantling the galaxy's greatest powers without ever showing themselves. No one could trace the source of the interference. No weapon signatures, no troop movement, nothing. Just silence and results. But there was more than vengeance behind Earth's response. Some Council scientists began to notice patterns in the chaos. The systems that went dark weren't random. They formed a shape, a path, spiraling outward from the Sol system in perfect symmetry. It looked almost intentional, like humanity was drawing something across the stars. But what it was, no one could explain. On the 5th week, a scout drone from the Andari Collective managed to breach the perimeter of Earth's solar system. What it recorded shattered every assumption the galaxy held. Earth was no longer the same planet they remembered. Its surface glowed faintly, like veins of light were running beneath its crust. Massive constructs orbited it, machines of design beyond anything the Council had authorized humans to possess. Some called them weapons. Others said they were shields. But one thing was certain: Earth had changed, and humanity had become something far greater than anyone expected. Rumors began to spread through the Council's networks. Some whispered that humans had merged their consciousness with artificial intelligence, that they had found a way to unify their entire population into a single will. Others said they had unlocked the ancient technology buried in the colonies, the same power the Council had sworn to keep hidden for millennia. Whatever it was, the results were undeniable. Every attempt to approach Earth now ended the same way. Ships disabled, crews rendered unconscious, systems wiped clean. The humans weren't fighting back. They were warning everyone to stay away. By the 7th week, the Council's unity began to crack. Some members demanded immediate negotiation. Others called for a preemptive strike before Earth could expand further. But how do you attack what you can't see? How do you defeat an enemy that never fires, never speaks, and yet always wins? The tension inside the Council chamber grew unbearable. Accusations flew, alliances splintered, and the once proud Galactic Council found itself paralyzed. Still, there was one thing no one could ignore: the transmissions. They started as faint whispers in the deep space frequencies, almost like echoes of human voices. Some were fragments of old Earth songs, others were patterns of sound that formed messages when decoded. One of the decoded fragments chilled everyone who heard it. "We asked for peace," it said, "but you taught us fear. Now we've learned to speak your language." After that, the transmission stopped. But every day since, new anomalies appeared across the stars, signs of human activity in systems no ship had reported entering. Now, as the Council gathers again, the Great Hall glows with the reflection of Earth's image on the central display. The delegates watch as the blue-green sphere begins to flicker, then change. A new signal is coming from Earth. For the first time in months, the humans are speaking again. The Council holds its breath. Across 1,000 worlds, every observer listens in silence. The voice returns, calm and human, echoing through the chamber. "You feared what we'd become," it says. "You should have feared what we always were," and then the hologram fades to black. The Council sits frozen. Somewhere deep in space, a ripple of light begins to spread, fast, expanding outward from Earth's orbit like the pulse of a heartbeat. No one knows what it is or how far it will reach, but one thing is clear: whatever humanity has unleashed, it's already moving. The silence that follows feels heavier than any weapon. Because now the galaxy finally understands the truth. The humans didn't retaliate to win. They retaliated to remind everyone why Earth was never meant to be underestimated. And as that silent wave races toward the nearest star system, one question hangs unspoken across every world, every ship, every frightened heart watching the sky. What has Earth become? No one slept that night on the Central Worlds. The message from Earth had spread across every system faster than light itself, replayed again and again until it felt burned into every living mind. Even in the quietest corners of the galaxy, people could feel it, the weight of something vast and unstoppable moving beneath the surface of reality. The Galactic Council tried to control the panic, calling for calm, promising answers, but no amount of reassurance could hide the truth anymore. Humanity wasn't just back. They were changing everything. In the weeks that followed, entire fleets were ordered to gather near the border of the Sol system. Observers were stationed at a safe distance, scanning, measuring, analyzing every flicker of energy coming from the human homeworld. But what they found made no sense. The planet's electromagnetic field had expanded far beyond normal range, reaching deep into surrounding space like a living pulse. Every sensor that got too close began to malfunction, as if the instruments themselves were being rewritten. The scientists called it a resonance field. Others whispered a simpler word: control. But how had it come to this? For thousands of years, Earth had been treated as a member of the galactic community. Rough, unpredictable, but harmless. The humans were explorers, traders, inventors, always reaching for more, but never powerful enough to threaten the old empires. The Council had even admired their adaptability once. Humans could thrive on worlds others considered uninhabitable. They learned languages, rebuilt forgotten tech, and connected with species who had long isolated themselves. They were unpredictable, yes, but alive in a way few others were. That spark had always made them dangerous in theory. No one had imagined it would become reality. Behind the Council walls, there were those who claimed to have seen it coming. Quiet reports had circulated for decades about something buried beneath Earth's crust, a relic from before recorded galactic history, older than any known civilization. Some scientists had begged the Council to forbid human excavation efforts on their colonies near ancient ruins, claiming that those sites were linked to a power once feared by the first races of the stars. The warnings were dismissed as myths. Humanity was allowed to dig, and somewhere, in the red soil of a forgotten world, they found something that changed them forever. There were no official records of what they uncovered. Only fragments of recovered data from a destroyed research outpost hinted at what had happened. It spoke of a structure buried under kilometers of rock, black, metallic, humming faintly like it was breathing. The last message from that outpost had been one line: "It's not alien, it's human." After that, contact with the site vanished. The Council sent a probe, but it was destroyed before reaching orbit. They blamed equipment failure, but deep down, everyone suspected the truth, that the humans had found something ancient, something belonging to themselves, something they weren't supposed to awaken. Now, that same unknown technology pulsed within Earth's skies. Orbiting stations once human-built now appeared transformed, covered in patterns of light that moved like living veins. The transmission waves they emitted carried no recognizable code, but those who listened long enough swore they could hear voices whispering beneath the static, words that sounded almost familiar. On the frontier, civilian vessels began reporting strange encounters. Pilots claimed to see massive silhouettes passing through the dark, moving faster than any known drive could allow. No heat signatures, no identification, just the faint reflection of blue light trailing behind them. When one crew tried to approach, their systems shut down instantly. The ship drifted powerless until rescue arrived. The crew was alive but shaken. They said they'd seen faces, human faces, staring at them from the void. While fear spread through the galaxy, Earth remained silent. No diplomats, no ambassadors, not even a demand for negotiation. It was as if the humans had turned inward, focused entirely on something only they understood. And that silence terrified everyone more than any threat could have. Inside the Council, the once unified alliance was fracturing. Some wanted to launch an immediate preemptive strike, fearing that if they waited any longer, Earth's new power would grow beyond control. Others insisted that attacking again would only provoke something worse. The Council's supreme commander warned that humanity was no longer bound by known science, that what they were using wasn't just technology, it was transformation. He claimed their retaliation was part of something bigger, something not even they fully understood yet. But when pressed for proof, he had none. Only fragments of intercepted data showing that Earth's population had dropped dramatically since the retaliation began. Billions of humans gone. The official report said they had merged, but no one knew what that meant. Theories exploded across the networks. Some believed humanity had transferred their consciousness into machines, creating a collective mind capable of controlling energy itself. Others thought they had evolved into a new form, one that no longer needed physical bodies. Whatever the truth was, one fact stood above all. Earth's signal now resonated across space like a heartbeat. Perfectly timed, unrelenting, and growing stronger every day. Meanwhile, life in the galaxy began to change in subtle, disturbing ways. Planets near the Sol border started experiencing fluctuations in gravity. Power systems flickered, communications cut in and out. On certain nights, people claimed to see strange lights streaking across their skies, forming shapes that resembled constellations no one recognized. Some believed it was a warning. Others said it was an invitation. One independent explorer, a woman from the outer colonies, decided to test it herself. She piloted her small ship toward the outer edge of the resonance field surrounding Earth. For 3 days, she transmitted her findings: fluctuations in particle fields, sound vibrations in the vacuum, faint pulses like coded rhythms. Then her final message came through, voice calm but trembling. "It's not defense. It's communication. The planet's speaking to something." Her transmission cut off mid-sentence. The ship was never found. And so the Council waited, trapped between fear and paralysis. Every attempt to predict Earth's next move failed. Every signal they sent was ignored. The humans didn't seem to want revenge anymore. They wanted something deeper, something that frightened even the most powerful species among the stars. Because when a civilization stops fighting for survival and starts fighting for meaning, it becomes something unstoppable. Then, without warning, Earth's field expanded again. Sensors across half the galaxy detected the pulse. Gentle, rhythmic, but strong enough to be felt through space-time itself. Planets thousands of light-years away registered small disturbances in their skies, like waves rippling through reality. For the first time, even the Council's most advanced instruments failed to record what happened next. The holographic display in the Council chamber suddenly reignited, unprompted. A faint image appeared, a human silhouette standing against a backdrop of stars. The figure looked neither angry nor vengeful, just calm. Behind it, shapes of vast constructs rotated silently, forming patterns that matched no known design. The voice that followed wasn't loud. "It didn't need to be. You feared our growth," it said softly. "But what we've become isn't war. It's return." And then, as quickly as it appeared, the image dissolved. The delegates stared at the empty air in stunned silence. None dared speak. Somewhere deep in the chamber, the hum of the recording system still echoed faintly, like the sound of a distant heartbeat. Every race in that hall understood something profound and terrifying, that the humans weren't just preparing for retaliation anymore. They were preparing for revelation, and as the Council debated what to do next, no one noticed the faint shimmer beginning to form above the chamber's ceiling. Small at first, like a flicker of light. Then it widened, pulsing softly in rhythm with the same invisible beat coming from Earth. Whatever the humans had awakened, it was no longer confined to one world. It was spreading, and soon the entire galaxy would know what it meant. The light that shimmered above the Council chamber grew brighter over the next few hours, and no one could explain it. Technicians tried to scan the anomaly, but their readings came back empty. No energy source, no projection, nothing tangible at all. It simply existed, like a reflection without an origin. Some of the delegates wanted to evacuate the chamber immediately, fearing it was another human transmission. But others, too afraid to appear weak, ordered everyone to remain. They hoped it would fade away. It didn't. Instead, the shimmer began to pulse. Slow. Rhythmic. Matching the same frequency that Earth's mysterious signal had been emitting for weeks. Every few seconds, the air seemed to tremble, and people could feel it in their bones, like the beat of a massive, unseen heart. It wasn't violent or destructive. It was steady, calm, almost deliberate, as if someone, or something, was watching from beyond the veil of light. While the Council struggled to make sense of it, life across the galaxy was unraveling. Entire trade routes had collapsed due to navigation failures. Ships drifting between systems began to vanish without distress calls. Colonies on the edge of known space reported mirrored skies, where people could see faint images of other worlds reflected above their own. Scientists called it a space-time distortion, but others whispered that it was humanity reshaping reality itself. To the ordinary citizen, Earth had become a ghost story. A legend. Some feared it, others admired it, but everyone knew its name again. Children whispered about the blue planet that could think. Merchants avoided human-made goods, afraid that even simple devices could carry hidden signals. And yet curiosity spread faster than fear. Quietly, researchers from every species began forming secret groups, trading human data, trying to decode the truth of what had happened to them. Among them was a linguist named Iden, a quiet analyst from the Varus Dominion. She had studied human languages for years before the war, fascinated by their diversity and contradictions. Unlike most of her colleagues, she didn't see humanity as dangerous, only unpredictable. When the first human message appeared months ago, she recognized something strange in its phrasing. The tone wasn't aggressive. It was deeply personal, almost mournful. To her, it didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a goodbye. Iden began collecting fragments of human transmissions that others had dismissed as noise. When she overlaid them, she noticed something extraordinary. The static contained repeating patterns, matching ancient stellar coordinates. The locations weren't random. They formed a map. Every coordinate pointed toward places once known as human colonies. And something else. Each one was near a site the Council had forbidden humans from exploring centuries ago. The ruins. When she presented her findings to her superiors, they silenced her report immediately. The Council didn't want any new theories spreading, especially not ones suggesting humanity had found something powerful enough to bend the laws of space. But Iden didn't stop. With help from a small network of scientists who had lost faith in the Council's leadership, she transmitted her data to a neutral outpost near the edge of the Sol system. There, hidden beneath the frozen crust of an abandoned moon, a group of independent researchers had built a listening array aimed directly at Earth. They called themselves the Watchers. They had been recording the planet's strange energy pulses since the Retaliation began, trying to interpret the signals. What Iden's data revealed changed everything. The pulse pattern wasn't random. It was language, mathematical, structured, but filled with emotional cadence. Not just information, but expression. The planet wasn't defending itself anymore. It was communicating. The realization left everyone silent. Because if Earth was truly speaking, then humanity hadn't disappeared. They had become part of something larger. Meanwhile, within the Council, panic turned into blame. Each faction accused another of triggering the Retaliation. Old rivalries resurfaced and treaties began to crumble. Armies quietly mobilized, not to fight humanity, but to prepare for what might come next. Some feared that Earth would eventually expand its influence, reaching into every system connected by hyperspace. Others thought it was already happening. Reports of light storms in deep space, a phenomenon that disoriented ships and disrupted time signals, were increasing daily. In one such event, a patrol near the Outer Rim encountered something no one could explain. The crew of the Vestra Dawn reported seeing what looked like a human city floating in the void. Towers of glass and light, streets suspended in darkness, all surrounded by faint blue mist. The sensors detected no gravity, no oxygen, nothing to support life. Yet the ship's captain swore he saw movement, figures walking along the glowing streets, looking up at them. Before they could record further, the vision vanished, leaving only empty space. Back on the Council's central world, the anomaly above the chamber finally shifted. It expanded outward, filling the ceiling with a shimmering reflection of stars. Then, without warning, it displayed an image, Earth, spinning slowly in silence. But it wasn't the same as before. Surrounding the planet were hundreds of smaller spheres, glowing softly, orbiting like satellites made of pure light. The delegates stared, speechless, as the hologram zoomed closer. The light spheres weren't machines. They were human. Their outlines were faint, almost transparent, but their faces were clear. Men, women, children, all looking calm, eyes bright as if illuminated from within. The image lingered only a few seconds before fading. But it was enough to send the entire chamber into chaos. "Are they alive?" one delegate shouted. "Is that what they've become?" No one had answers. The communication experts ran diagnostics, but the transmission didn't come from outside. It came from inside their own network, as though Earth's signal had grown strong enough to manifest within their systems. The Council immediately ordered the network severed, but it was too late. The image had already been seen across dozens of worlds. Within days, new movements began forming across the galaxy. Some species saw humanity as a warning, a reminder of what happens when a civilization digs too deep. Others saw them as visionaries who had transcended flesh and limitation. For the first time in centuries, people were questioning the Council's authority. Riots broke out on several colonies, with protesters chanting one haunting phrase taken from the human transmission: "Return is not the end." Back in the Watcher's outpost, Iden and her small team worked day and night to decode the latest signals. The data was becoming clearer now. The pulses carried layered frequencies, one of which matched a biological pattern: human neural waves. She realized the horrifying possibility. Earth wasn't just a planet anymore. It was alive, and its consciousness was human. That revelation filled her with both awe and dread. If humanity had truly merged with the planet, then the Retaliation wasn't an act of war, it was evolution. But to what end? Were they trying to communicate, or to pull the rest of the galaxy into whatever they had become. Her thoughts were interrupted when one of her technicians shouted in alarm. The signal had changed again. The pulse was no longer expanding, it was focusing, converging on a single point beyond the solar system. A star system long abandoned after its collapse centuries ago. The coordinates matched one of the Council's restricted zones. Iden stared at the readings, heart pounding. Whatever Earth was doing, it was building towards something massive. And as the team prepared to send their report, the entire outpost began to shake. The lights flickered, and the walls hummed with that same deep, rhythmic pulse, the sound of Earth's heart. Now echoing from across the stars, Iden looked up at the ceiling as the air shimmered with faint blue light. For the first time, she understood what the humans had meant. The retaliation had never been about destruction. It had always been about awakening. And now, that awakening had begun to spread. The walls of the outpost vibrated like something alive beneath the ice. Every console flickered with the same rhythmic glow, the pulse from Earth syncing perfectly with the trembling structure. Iden gripped the edge of the control table, her breath uneven as the lights dimmed and surged again, like the station itself had joined in some invisible heartbeat. The sound wasn't loud, but it reached into the bones, steady, powerful, and deeply human. It felt less like a threat and more like a summons. The Watchers tried to regain control, scrambling to reroute power, but every system responded as if under someone else's command. Their screens filled with symbols, complex lines of code arranged into patterns that almost resembled language. Then, slowly, the symbols shifted, forming something unmistakable. Letters. Human letters. The message was short. "We are not lost. Listen." Iden froze. For a moment, she couldn't speak. The room had gone completely silent except for the pulse that now throbbed through the floor. One of her team whispered, "They're trying to talk to us." But before anyone could respond, the signal intensified. The ice above the outpost cracked with a sharp, thunderous sound. Fragments fell from the ceiling as energy readings spiked beyond measurable limits. Iden knew they were witnessing something far beyond communication. It was connection. Earth wasn't just sending a message, it was reaching for them. Across the galaxy, the same phenomenon began unfolding in countless systems. Fleets reported strange energy waves sweeping through hyperspace, harmless but impossible to avoid. Planets near the outer rim saw the stars flicker as though light itself were bending. On some worlds, citizens claimed to hear faint whispers in the air, voices that spoke in every language at once. Repeating the same phrase, return begins with remembrance. The Galactic Council, already fragile, descended into chaos. Emergency meetings turned into shouting matches as entire factions broke away. Some demanded immediate action to destroy Earth before the signal spread further, calling it a psychological weapon designed to destabilize the galaxy. Others argued that it wasn't an attack, but an evolution, and that humanity had found something the rest of them had long forgotten. The council chamber, once a symbol of control, now trembled under the pressure of fear. Meanwhile, deep within the resonance field surrounding Earth, a single council reconnaissance ship broke through the interference. Its mission was simple: observe and report. The crew expected destruction, but instead, what they saw left them speechless. Orbiting above the blue planet was a vast structure, no longer metallic, no longer mechanical. It looked like a living network of light, its shape constantly shifting, flowing like liquid glass. It connected Earth to the surrounding spheres that now floated in space, each one pulsating softly like stars caught in a heartbeat. From the planet's surface rose faint streams of energy, as though the entire world was breathing. The ship's captain, an older officer who had once fought alongside humans decades ago, stared at the sight in awe. "They've merged," he whispered. "They've merged with their world." His first officer didn't respond. She was transfixed by something else, a single point of light rising from the planet's surface, moving toward them at impossible speed. Before anyone could react, the light reached their hull and simply passed through, flooding the ship with warmth and sound. Every crew member heard the same thing, not words, but emotion. A feeling of longing, regret, and hope so intense it brought some to tears. And then it was gone, leaving silence behind. The ship's instruments, once dead from interference, now worked perfectly. The captain realized that whatever humanity had become, they weren't trying to destroy. They were trying to share. Back at the outpost, Iden watched as the patterns on her screen began to stabilize. The codes were now forming full sentences in human language. She read them out loud, voice shaking. "You feared us because you forgot what you are. We feared you because we remembered too late." The words faded, replaced by coordinates. Millions of them, spreading outward from Earth in every direction. It was a map, not of destruction but of connection. Each point marked a world once touched by humanity, either through colonization, trade, or history. The network stretched across the entire galaxy. Iden's realization hit her like a storm. The humans weren't building weapons. They were linking everything together. Every planet, every station, every trace of life. The pulse wasn't war, it was synchronization. Humanity was weaving the galaxy into a single living system. But then came the warning. The lights dimmed, and a new message appeared, this time fractured and unstable. Not all will understand. Not all will accept. The air around them crackled with static as a second energy source appeared on the sensors, massive, approaching fast. Iden checked the readings and felt her stomach drop. It was a council fleet. Hundreds of warships armed and ready, closing in on Earth's resonance field. The council had chosen fear. The outpost communication lines erupted with chatter. Some colonies begged the fleet to stand down, others cheered it on. But the captains didn't stop. The order had been given to neutralize the threat before the signal spread beyond control. No one knew what that would mean, or what humanity might do in response. But every ship prepared to open fire. Inside the outpost, the walls began to glow again. The pulse quickened, matching Iden's heartbeat. "They know," she whispered. "Earth knows they're coming." The team watched in disbelief as the icy surface above them began to split apart, revealing streaks of blue light flowing beneath. The energy readings climbed higher and higher until their instruments overloaded. Then, without warning, the image of Earth appeared again, this time not as a hologram, but as if it were reflected in the air itself. The blue planet hung before them, surrounded by threads of light stretching across the darkness. For a moment it was breathtaking. Then the reflection shifted, revealing something even more startling. Beyond Earth, within the resonance field, shadows moved, vast shapes, not ships, not life as they knew it. Patterns that looked like fragments of stars folding inward. One of the watchers whispered, "They're opening something." On the council fleet, the lead commander gave the final order. The weapons began to charge, light gathering across hundreds of hulls, aimed at the planet below. But as the countdown reached its final moment, every display on every ship went dark. The stars vanished. Space itself seemed to blur, and for a single heartbeat, the entire galaxy held its breath. Then came the sound. Not a weapon, not an explosion, but a single tone that filled the void. It was soft at first, like a hum, then deeper, echoing through every ship, every planet, every heart that could hear it. The tone wasn't random. It carried rhythm, meaning, and within it, a voice, human, clear, and steady. "You tried to silence what you couldn't understand," it said. "Now you will listen." Every star system flickered. The resonance field expanded again, stretching far beyond Sul, touching worlds that had never even heard of Earth. Across the galaxy, lights flared in the skies, forming patterns that no one could explain. The Council's fleet was suspended in the void, powerless, frozen in the brilliance of that rising wave. In the outpost, Iden fell to her knees, her screen still glowing faintly. She could see the data streaming faster than light, the pulse now reaching every corner of known space. It was too vast to stop, too precise to be random. Humanity's final act was unfolding, not vengeance, not conquest, but revelation. The hum deepened, rising like a breath before a storm. Iden looked up through the cracked ceiling at the blue glow filling the sky and whispered, "They're not just changing the galaxy. They're waking it up." And then, in one blinding instant, the pulse surged again, faster, brighter, alive, spreading through the stars as every world waited to see what would come next. The pulse that rippled through the stars did not fade. It evolved. It changed pitch, spreading like waves through a boundless ocean of night. For a moment, every living being across the galaxy felt the same sensation, a warmth behind the eyes, a vibration deep in the chest, as though the sound wasn't just heard, it was remembered. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the light vanished. Space returned to silence. Instruments restarted, ships reappeared, and planets resumed their orbit as though nothing had happened. But something had changed. Aiden could feel it immediately. The air inside the outpost was heavier, charged with energy that made her skin prickle. Her team, pale and trembling, stared at the screens now filled with streams of unreadable data. The resonance frequency had stabilized, but not to Earth's. It had locked onto something else. Another source, somewhere beyond the known galaxy. The numbers scrolled endlessly, coordinates reaching past mapped space into the black regions where no star had ever been recorded. For the first time, she felt real fear. Humanity's signal was no longer alone. Something had answered. The data was faint but unmistakable. A reply pulse, mimicking Earth's rhythm perfectly but slightly distorted, like an echo coming from unfathomable distance. It wasn't just repeating the human frequency, it was synchronizing with it. Every few seconds, the pulse grew stronger, matching Earth's heartbeat as if the two were communicating. The realization struck Aiden with icy clarity. "They didn't start this," she whispered. "They woke it." Her words hung in the air. The others didn't respond, but she saw the same thought forming behind their frightened eyes. What if humanity hadn't created this power? What if the ruins they unearthed had been a warning, not a gift? At the same time, the Council fleet, still floating powerless after the Great Pulse, began to regain partial control. Engines flickered back online, but the communication arrays behaved strangely. Every ship that attempted to send a message found their words rewritten mid-transmission. Human words appeared where alien ones were typed. Messages that said, "Retreat" were changed to "Remember." Commands to fire were replaced with "Listen." It wasn't just interference, it was control. The fleet systems were being rewritten by the signal itself. In the command vessel, the admiral ordered all communications severed, but before the crew could respond, a shadow passed across their view screen. It wasn't a ship. It was something massive, stretching beyond the limits of sight. The stars behind it vanished as though swallowed. At first they thought it was a projection. Then their sensors detected movement. The object wasn't approaching. It was awakening. A low hum filled the void, identical to the resonance pulse, but deeper, older. The crew watched in silence as streaks of light appeared across the darkness, forming faint geometric lines that connected across hundreds of kilometers. Slowly, impossibly, the shape took form, a structure so vast it defied comprehension. It wasn't human, but it wasn't alien either. It felt ancient, patient, and aware. Aiden's outpost received the same readings moments later. Her screen lit up with massive energy fluctuations rippling through the sector. The coordinates aligned perfectly with the strange signal Earth had locked onto. She zoomed in on the data and felt her stomach twist. The readings were identical to the energy signature of the ruins humanity had first uncovered, the ruins that had started this entire conflict. She understood then that this wasn't Earth's creation. It was Earth's inheritance. Humanity hadn't built the resonance. They had awakened something buried long before their species ever looked at the stars. And now that ancient force was responding. On Earth, things were shifting too. The planet's orbiting spheres of light began to move in perfect harmony, aligning into a single spiral that reached upward toward the dark void. The pattern matched the geometry of the structure emerging near the fleet. It was a connection, a bridge forming across unimaginable distance. Observers on the moon reported seeing flashes of light traveling from Earth's surface into space, each beam pulsing in time with the resonance. The humans, whatever they had become, were reaching toward that colossal shape. But there was something else buried in the data, something Aiden almost missed, a secondary signal layered beneath the primary pulse. It was weak, almost like static, but she could make out fragments of human words embedded in it. We thought we could control it. We were wrong. Then the signal cut off. Her heart sank. Humanity hadn't planned this. They weren't leading the event. They were being pulled into it. The retaliation, the silence, the transformation, it had all been part of something larger that even they didn't understand. Back aboard the fleet, panic spread as the colossal structure began to rotate slowly, its inner rings glowing faintly. Space itself seemed to twist around it, bending light and time. Ships near the perimeter reported distortions in gravity, their hulls creaking under unseen pressure. The admiral, desperate for control, ordered the fleet to withdraw, but their navigation systems failed completely. The ships couldn't move. They were caught in the pull. The massive shape continued to unfold, revealing what looked like an opening, a gateway, black and endless, surrounded by radiant light. Through it, faint outlines of worlds could be seen, distorted like reflections in deep water. No one knew if they were seeing into another dimension or simply the past. Some believed it was a doorway to where the ancient builders of the ruins had gone. Others feared it was something worse, a return of what had once ruled the stars before any known civilization existed. The council chamber received the first clear image of the phenomenon moments later. The delegates stared in horror as the projection filled the hall. Even the most logical minds couldn't deny it anymore. The retaliation wasn't just about humanity reclaiming dignity. It was about reawakening something buried in the fabric of the galaxy itself. Something connected to the origins of intelligent life. Iden replayed the human transmission again, hearing the voice that had once spoken through static. You feared what we'd become. You should have feared what we always were. The meaning was clearer now. Humanity wasn't just evolving. They were the missing link to something ancient, something that had been sleeping within them since their beginning. And now, it was awake. Suddenly, all systems in the outpost went dark. The hum stopped. The silence that followed felt like the pause before a storm breaks. Then, one by one, the monitors came back online, displaying a single image, the stars forming into a shape. It was the same spiral pattern Earth's light spheres had formed, but now it stretched across the galaxy. Every major system, every inhabited world was part of it. The map wasn't random, it was deliberate. A signal connecting everything that had ever been touched by life. Iden realized with growing dread that the resonance wasn't spreading to destroy. It was aligning everything, synchronizing every conscious mind into one vast network. The humans hadn't unleashed a weapon. They had triggered a return to unity, but unity came with a price. Across the stars, reports began pouring in of people hearing voices not their own. Engineers felt their machines respond before commands were issued. Entire cities stopped mid-motion as if time itself had slowed. And in those still moments, everyone heard the same quiet whisper, gentle and human. Do not resist. The cycle completes. Iden backed away from her console, heart pounding. This isn't evolution, she breathed. It's assimilation. As she spoke, the sky above the outpost split open, the ice reflecting a deep blue light from beyond the stars. The resonance field thickened until even space seemed to ripple. Somewhere in that glow, she could feel the weight of countless minds merging, human and otherwise. The ancient signal had found its voice again, and through humanity, it had chosen to speak. The spiral across the galaxy began to tighten. Energy built at its center, converging on the structure near the fleet. The hum returned, louder, unstoppable, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. And then, for the first time, the voice of Earth spoke again, calm, sorrowful, and resolute. We opened what was buried. Now we cannot close it. The light flared brighter than any sun, casting its glow across 1,000 worlds. Every eye turned to the stars, waiting for what came next. The light swallowed everything. Stars vanished, and for a brief moment, there was only white silence. A weightless, infinite pause that seemed to stretch beyond time. Then slowly the universe exhaled. The brightness faded into soft waves of color, folding back into the void. The colossal structure near the fleet pulsed once more, and from within it, a surge of energy rippled outward, touching every ship, every outpost, every inhabited world. What followed was not destruction, but revelation. Iden gasped as her vision blurred. The outpost walls dissolved into a blur of light and shadow. She saw Earth, its oceans glowing faintly, its continents outlined by the pulsing rhythm of energy rising from its core. The spheres that once hovered above it were gone. Instead, an immense, translucent shape encompassed the planet, almost like wings stretching across the void. Humanity was no longer confined to its physical form. It had become something vast, alive, and aware. In that moment, she felt something stir in her mind. A voice, not spoken, but felt, echoed through her thoughts. "You have seen what they feared. You are part of what remains." She tried to speak but found no words. The voice continued, calm and vast. The council sought control. Humanity sought understanding. Both paths led here. The scene shifted again. She was no longer in the outpost, but standing on what looked like the surface of a forgotten world, one half covered in crystal structures that reflected distant stars. Around her, faint silhouettes moved, figures of light, tall and human-like, yet impossibly old. They watched her silently, their presence neither hostile nor kind. One stepped forward, and though its face was featureless, she knew instinctively that it was speaking directly to her. "You opened the resonance," it said, its tone soft and echoing. "You've awakened the memory of creation." Aiden's pulse quickened. "What are you?" "We are what was left behind," the being replied. "Before your kind existed, before the council ruled the stars, we built the lattice that binds all life. When the cycle ended, we buried the key on the world you now call Earth, hoping it would rest. But the humans, you listened. You learned the old frequency, so Earth's retaliation wasn't revenge?" The being tilted its head, almost in pity. "No, it was instinct, a return to what it once was. The humans are not separate from us. They are our continuation." The words sank deep into her. Humanity wasn't the beginning of something new. It was the echo of something ancient, reborn in flesh and time. The war, the fear, the destruction, all had been triggered by a misunderstanding. The humans hadn't meant to attack. They had simply awakened their original purpose, to reawaken the dormant network of creation. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath her. The crystal world began to fracture. The being looked upward as if hearing something distant. The cycle completes. The lattice awakens again. "You must decide whether to join or to end it." "Join or end what?" she demanded. "The merging, the return of all consciousness into one. What humanity began cannot be undone, but it can be guided. You are the bridge between what was and what remains." Before she could respond, the vision shattered. She was back in the outpost, alarms flashing red across the control deck. The others were shouting, trying to stabilize the energy surge. Outside the windows, the sky glowed with spiraling patterns of light. The great structure near the council fleet was collapsing inward, folding into itself like a dying star. Ships caught in its pull disappeared one by one, not in flames but in silence, dissolving into the spiral of energy. Aiden rushed to her console, her fingers flying across the controls. The data showed two converging frequencies, one from Earth, the other from the structure. They were merging, but not harmoniously. The collision was destabilizing space itself. If they combined at full power, it could wipe out the entire sector or fuse every mind caught within into a single, irreversible entity. Her team looked to her, terrified. "What do we do?" Aiden hesitated. She heard the voice again, quieter this time. "You cannot stop it, but you can shape it." She understood. The network needed a choice, a final direction. Either let the resonance complete and merge all life into one vast consciousness, or disrupt it, ending the cycle but scattering the fragments of connection forever. Both paths meant change. Both meant sacrifice. She took a deep breath and accessed the main control node. "We reroute the resonance," she said firmly. "We won't let it consume everything." As she initiated the override, the energy field flickered violently. The structure trembled, collapsing faster. Across the galaxy, planets dimmed, their lights drawn toward the singular point. Her screen flashed warnings: critical instability, dimensional overlap imminent. She pushed the sequence through, forcing the two frequencies out of phase. Outside, the light shifted color, from white to deep blue, then scattered like shards of glass. The resonance fractured, spreading into billions of separate pulses. The pressure in her chest eased as systems rebooted. The outpost stabilized. The spiraling pattern in the sky faded, leaving only the cold shimmer of the stars. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, slowly, messages began coming through, fragmented transmissions from ships and colonies. The fleet had survived. Earth was intact, but the great structure was gone, erased as though it had never existed. Iden sank into her chair, exhausted. The resonance field was broken, but something told her the story wasn't over. She looked at the readings and noticed a strange anomaly, a faint pulse still repeating in the background noise. It was weak, almost unnoticeable, but it matched Earth's original frequency perfectly. Humanity's signal hadn't vanished. It had simply gone quiet, waiting. The Council reconvened weeks later. Their worlds had been shaken, their fleets crippled, their authority shattered. Reports spread that Earth was rebuilding, not in arrogance or vengeance, but in silence. They communicated little, but what few messages came through carried a tone of calm certainty. When Iden was summoned to testify, she told them everything she had seen, the ancient beings, the lattice, the choice. Many dismissed it as delusion, but some listened closely. One counselor asked, "If the resonance still echoes, what happens when it returns?" Iden met their gaze. "That depends on us. Maybe the next cycle won't start with fear." But even as she spoke, she felt that faint hum again beneath her words. Later that night, standing outside beneath the stars, she could hear it more clearly, the quiet heartbeat of the universe, steady and alive. The network wasn't gone. It was simply dormant, waiting for balance. Then came the final twist. As she observed the stars through her visor, she noticed a flicker, a pattern too deliberate to be random. It wasn't coming from Earth this time. The signal originated from deep within Council territory, from a world untouched by the resonance before. The pulse repeated 3 times, slow and deliberate. She activated her console and decoded the sequence. Her breath caught in her throat as the message appeared on screen. We heard the song. "We remember." She stared in disbelief. The resonance wasn't just humanity's inheritance, it had spread. The ancient network hadn't been destroyed by her interference. It had adapted, embedding itself into the minds of those who had witnessed it. The cycle had not ended. It had evolved. Iden smiled faintly, half in awe, half in fear. The universe was quiet again, but it was no longer the same silence. Beneath that stillness, something vast was awakening, not to conquer, but to connect. The war was over, but the real transformation had just begun. Far beyond her outpost, deep in the void, the remnants of the colossal structure flickered once more, forming a single word in the starlight, simple, human, and eternal. Remember. The weeks following the resonance event passed like an uncertain dawn. Across the galaxy, the silence that once carried fear now felt strangely comforting. The chaos had ended, but what replaced it was a quiet unlike anything before, a stillness that hummed with potential. Ships began returning to their home worlds, cities rebuilt their shattered systems, and the Galactic Council, once fractured by fear of Earth, met again, not in anger, but in reflection. Something fundamental had changed. The war that nearly consumed countless worlds had ended not through conquest, but through understanding. Iden remained stationed at the outpost, now functioning more as a research center than a military base. The ice plains outside had melted slightly from the energy pulses, revealing black crystalline rock beneath. The readings showed traces of resonance still woven into the planet's magnetic field, like faint echoes of what had once passed through it. She spent her days studying those traces, though she knew she was searching for something more than data. She wanted to understand why it all happened, why humanity of all species carried the key to something that ancient. The first message from Earth arrived quietly, without ceremony. The holographic transmission flickered to life above her console, showing a man whose voice was calm and unhurried. He introduced himself as a representative of the New Earth Assembly. No longer a government of nations, but a collective dedicated to rebuilding without the divisions of the past. His words were simple. The resonance has changed us, but not as many feared. We are still human. We still choose who we become. He looked directly into the recorder. Tell the council we remember what happened, but we will not let it define us. Iden replayed the message several times. There was no arrogance in his tone, no sense of victory, only resolve. Humanity had learned something no one else in the galaxy had dared to face, that power without purpose leads only to fear. And that fear, if left unchallenged, can consume entire civilizations. The Council's response came days later. After long debate, they voted to end all sanctions on Earth. No fleets, no blockades, no more threats of containment. Their reasoning was simple. They could no longer claim to fully understand what humanity had become. The resonance, though silent, had left a trace within every world it touched. Some council species reported strange dreams, visions of places they had never been, languages they had never spoken. Scientists called it residual harmonization. Iden called it what it truly was, connection. Over time, she noticed subtle changes among her own crew. The fear that had once shaped every conversation was gone. People spoke softly, thought deeply, and sometimes paused mid-sentence as if listening to something distant yet familiar. It wasn't control. It was awareness. A quiet reminder that every thought, every choice echoed through something greater. Months passed, and the universe began to heal. The great structure that once loomed over the council fleet was gone, but fragments of it drifted across the void, glowing faintly like falling stars. Some saw them as debris. Others believed they were seeds, pieces of the old lattice waiting to take root again in new worlds. Explorers began tracking their paths, though few dared approach. Even now, no one truly knew what they were. Iden sometimes sat by the observation window and watched the stars shimmer in the blackness. Each flicker reminded her of the word that had appeared at the end of it all: remember. That single message had carried through every data stream, every transmission, every faint signal that crossed the void. It wasn't a command, it was a promise. To remember what they had been, what they had nearly lost, and what they had finally understood. One evening, while reviewing old logs, Iden discovered something strange. Hidden in the background of the resonance data, faint, almost imperceptible, was a secondary pulse. It matched the frequency of her own voice during the final override. Somehow, when she disrupted the resonance, a fragment of her signal had been recorded and repeated back into the lattice. When she played it through a filter, she heard a faint whisper. "The bridge endures." She sat back, stunned. The ancient beings had called her the bridge. She had thought it a metaphor, but now she understood. The link between humanity and the rest of the galaxy hadn't been severed. It had been stabilized through her interference. Her hands trembled slightly as she realized what it meant. The cycle hadn't been broken, it had been redirected. Humanity's instinct to survive, to protect life rather than dominate it, had altered the resonance itself. It no longer sought to consume or unify by force. It had adapted to harmony. The network had learned from its human hosts. That discovery spread quickly. Across the council worlds, scientists confirmed it. The pulse that once carried fear now resonated at a frequency that encouraged stability in living systems. Crops grew faster, storms weakened before reaching settlements, and energy reactors across colonies began running more efficiently without explanation. The universe wasn't falling apart. It was aligning itself to a gentler rhythm. Still, there were unanswered questions. Where had the ancient creators gone? Why had they left the lattice dormant for so long? And why Earth, why humanity, had carried the key to awakening it? Some believed humanity had inherited their spark of creation by design. Others said it was coincidence. Iden didn't think it mattered anymore. What mattered was that humanity had chosen what to do with it. One night, long after the outpost had gone quiet, she received a transmission from deep space. No coordinates, no source signature, just a faint, calm voice speaking in a language she somehow understood without translation. The bridge has done its part. The cycle rests. When the stars sing again, remember. The message faded as quickly as it came. She didn't report it. Some things, she thought, weren't meant to be studied. They were meant to be carried. Years later, Iden left the outpost and returned to Earth. The planet had changed, but not in the way she expected. The cities were smaller, cleaner, and quieter. People worked together without the old divisions of nation or species. The oceans shimmered with faint blue veins of light. The same resonance glow that once burned across the stars, now gentle and steady like a heartbeat. She walked along the shoreline one morning, listening to the soft hum beneath the waves.